Hey, what's up everybody? Prime22 here, bringing you a new episode. Again, I don't know what they're called, episodes. I'm gonna say episode, just because, even if it's not episode, I'll just be different. A new episode of the Transformers Lore podcast. This is our second episode. Last episode we talked about Star Wars Transformers. And in the comments, a lot of you guys were like saying, hey, you should probably do the Marvel crossover stuff. And I think, yeah, that's pretty interesting. Not the topic of today, though. But the thing with the Marvel stuff is that we don't exactly know what universe it's in. I think we're going to have to assume it's a Climax universe simply because Marvel characters haven't shown up in any cluster outside of the Climax cluster. But that's pretty much all we got going for it there. So Marvel crossovers also hasn't really been... It's an interesting subject, and it's licensed. It has the Transformer title on the boxes. It's supposedly canon. At least the stories on the back of the boxes are. So I will get into that one day. But today, we're going to be continuing on with Transformers Beast Wars Uprising. Now, I have already done a video in this continuity, and it's like one of the only comic format, the only comic story from the Beast Wars Uprising universe, and that's Alone Together. So, link in the description maybe if I can remember. But in Alone Together we had the story of Rampage and Transmutate against Lord Imperius Dorilius. And it's actually, I think it's like my third most viewed video. But yeah, we're continuing on with the Beast Wars Uprising story. And today we're going back to Cybertron to see what's going on the planet. Why is it like such a horrible place as Alone Together suggests? And we're going to start by looking at the first tech story in the universe, Broken Windshields. Interestingly enough, Broken Windshields I think comes from like the idea that if you can't make a area, like an urban area, look nice, like if it has broken windshields around, or like broken windows rather, it's more likely to have crime. Which is an interesting theory. But let's set up the scene. It's Cybertron. We're in the 24th century CE, and Cybertron is, I guess, theoretically ruled by people called the Builders. And the Builders are your Autobots and your Decepticons. The Autobot-Decepticon war has pretty much slowed down to a crawl, where the Autobots and Decepticons are so out of energy that they really can't do anything. They're just lazy. Think of your most stereotypical, like, fat, both fat, diabetic, and ancient person, like, kept on a chair that can't do anything, just living off of what little energon is left on. I guess you can't apply the energon analogy to people, but whatever. What little energon's left they have. And they have created the Maximal and Predacons to continue the war for them. And instead of like full-on, energy expensive wars on Cybertron, they decide to limit it to arena fighting. So you have gladiator matches between Maximals and Predacons. And we talked about this a little bit before in the first episode of Beast Wars Uprising. Now, energy-efficient builders, aka cassettes, micromasters, those ones are still running around. But it's the big ones. It's your... I don't know if we have anyone named yet, but the standard-sized Autobots and Decepticons are not moving around. Because the Builders are taking up most of the energon, the Maximals and Predacons are pretty much in ghettos, and really their only chance for survival is to fight in the gladiator pits. Interestingly enough, the Cybertronians have not gone out into space much. It's implied that they're pretty much being kept on Cybertron, and implied that humanity seems to have a lot more power than they had in the past, because the Cybertronians are still getting information from humans, getting human entertainment imported, but they can't go out into space. So it makes you wonder what's going up with humanity, and we'll get to that in a future podcast episode. But yeah. Anyway, the Cybertronians get the Hunger Games movies. And from the Hunger Game movies, they decide to establish the Gladiator matches. That's what starts the whole Gladiator stuff in the first place. Now, I don't know if they've watched the Hunger Games, because that kind of leads into a rebellion, and kind of makes what's about to happen in hindsight pretty obvious, but we'll get to that. Many cities on Cybertron have fallen to ruin. Pretty much their only known name is based off of the arenas. But we get some city names like Gilbax and freaking Nyon. And just a little more backstory on here, more about the Gladiator stuff. What we consider the Beast Wars people, like Optimus Primal and his forces. We talked about this a little bit in the first Beast Wars Uprising episode, but Silverbolt and Rhinox died in the arena, and then Rat Trap was assumed dead, but we know he escaped. Blackarachnia works with Night Scream, and they decide to kill Optimus Primal and flee the arena. So, Optimus Primal is dead, but Blackarachnia escapes. Now, Blackarachnia, she wanted to leave Cybertron, and she joins up with some Predacons like Immorticon and Scavenger, and they find like a transwarp drive, and they're like, okay, we can use this to leave Cybertron. And they experiment with it, and any of you guys who know what transwarp technology is, you know you don't mess with that stuff. That stuff can send you flying in between universes. And they mess with the transwarp drive, and they end up in the Shattered Glass universe. For those of you who don't know, Shattered Glass is where the Autobots are the bad guys, Decepticons are the good guys, and so on. Actually, no, I take that back. Shattered Glass is going to come up, but no. They go into the Nexus. They go to Axiom Nexus, the world of the Trans-Techs. And for those of you who don't know, the Trans-Techs are really advanced. It's a really advanced Cybertronian society, and they observe the multiverse. They're the ones who invented the notation system that we use, and like Climax, blah, 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 blah. Speaking of, I need to quickly look up the name for the Beast Wars Uprising universe, because I don't remember that. Beast Wars Uprising is Climax 215.19 Epsilon. The Trans-Tech universe, aka Axiom Nexus, is Nexus 208.0 Epsilon. And Shattered Glass is Climax negative 408.24 Epsilon. Alright, got that out of the way. So yeah, Blackarachnia ends up in the Trans-Tech universe, and she ends up working under the command of Alpha Trion. Now, Alpha Trion, this doesn't take place in this story. This takes place in a story called, I think, Unification. Or Reunification or something like that. I don't know. It's one of those, how Balancing Act goes off into multiple stories. It's one of those. But Blackarachnia ends up serving under the command of Alpha Trion. But Alpha Trion is not actually the Trans-Tech Alpha Trion, but rather the Shattered Glass Alpha Trion. So he's secretly evil. And there's a whole story about that. I won't get into that. But somehow, for the purposes of this video, actually, we'll get to what happens with Blackarachnia later on. Now, the thing about the Gladiator matches is that the builders want to keep power in check. They don't necessarily want to see this war end, this war through Gladiator matches end. They want to see, this Gladiator match keep the lower classes in check, really. So what they do is they actually rig the arena battles. They keep it so that there's like an even playing field and that the games are exciting. And how they do that is they have a special agent called Lio Convoy. And Lio Convoy goes into the games and in secret will like sabotage a weapon or kill a dude and just make sure that who the builders want to win the match wins the match. Lio Convoy actually pretty much works under the command of Eject. For those of you who don't know, Eject's one of the cassettes that Blaster has. And I'm assuming Blaster's some old builder now, if he's not dead already. So anyway, yeah, Lio Convoy is pretty much going around rigging these rigging these arenas, rigging these battles. Yeah. So and Lio Convoy is really a pretty good person. He isn't really thinking through what he's doing. But that changes one day when he sees a shooting star crash into Cybertron, and he's like, "Oh, what's this?" So he goes off and finds that it was Blackarachnia who landed. Now, we don't know how Blackarachnia got from the Trans-Tech universe to Climax, whatever, the Beast Wars Uprising universe, how she returned. But she is back, and she is not happy to be on this planet again. And she talks to Lio Convoy. Lio Convoy talks about how he rigs the arena battles, and Blackarachnia is like, "What? That's crappy, don't you think?" She really hates the builder culture that's developed on Cybertron. And Lio Convoy, leaves her, and he thinks about what Blackarachnia said. He sees some Maximal police officers, because the Maximals also have police officers that enforce the builder law. And he sees them arresting some people. And also all the while, I think he's listening to some underground resistance radio. Actually, I think it's called Radio Free Cybertron? I'm not sure. I don't remember. I read this yesterday. I should remember. But I think it's Radio Free Cybertron. like the podcast, which I thought is interesting. But yeah, he attacks the Maximal officers. It's like Polar Claw, I think, and someone else. I don't remember. I forgot to chalk down their names on my notes. I'll do better next time, guys, I swear. But he's like, you know what? Yeah, this isn't right. I'm gonna go talk to Blackarachnia again. So he drives back off into, the outskirts to find Blackarachnia, and he finds Blackarachnia has developed already a resistance with, is it pronounced Skyla? Scylla? She's from Beast Wars, Neo, or Beast Wars 2nd, one of the two. As well as Baboom. And they're developing a rebellion, a resistance. And Lao Convoy's like, oh, really? You guys want to rebel already? That's a little fast, don't you think? But then Blackarachnia, like the title of the story, shatters his windshield and reveals that inside Lao Convoy is something called the Energon Matrix. And the Energon Matrix was what was used to create the Maximals and the Predacons in the first place by the Builders. And the Energon Matrix was hidden in Lao Convoy, as the Builders needed to use him as their agent anyway. And Blackarachnia is like, you have the Energon Matrix, you're the key to freeing the planet. And Lao Convoy was like, oh, okay, I guess we're doing this then. So they decide that they're going to start a rebellion. They go to the Dodecahex Arena, and while there, Eject's been worried that Lao Convoy's been missing for a bit. So he calls him, and Lao Convoy's like, yo, and Eject's like, oh, you're good, okay, you're back. Alright, here's how you're going to rig this arena battle that's about to happen. Do this. And he's like, okay, and then hangs up. He uses an Engelmaw's blaster, which is interesting because Engelmaw's energy is from Unicron. But uses one of those blasters he's taken and assassinates a narrator, the dude who's like overseeing the arena, because it's just like it's a broadcasted event with your energetic arena host, and he kills him with the blaster, and then the rebels take over all the camera stuff, and pretty much Lao Convoy delivers a speech talking about how he's been hired by the Builders to rig all the arena battles throughout all this time, and he even uses that recording from Eject, who was telling him how to rig the battle that he recorded. And so he also shows his Energon Matrix and explains, what it means and stuff, and then calls for his rebellion. And this begins an event called the Grand Uprising. With the Grand Uprising, Predacons and Maximals across Cybertron rebel against the Autobot and Decepticon Builders. Pretty much you have Micromaster. The Builders are pretty much, can't move. So they have the Micromasters really serve as their forces, and chaos reigns over Cybertron. And Lao Convoy has become this leader of this Grand Uprising. Now there is a Builder Assembly that serves as the government of the Builders, and they include people like Ratbat. But they decide, alright Eject, you screwed this one up, you're gonna have to die. And Eject's like, but here's a sample of Lao Convoy's CNA, his genetic material. And we can use the Energon Matrix with his CNA to create a clone of Lao Convoy. Or a clone army, I can't remember. I know eventually it's going to be a clone, but I can't remember if it's a clone army or not. But like using a Lao Convoy clone, we can beat this rebellion and secure the planet once more. And Ratbat's like, oh, that's a little interesting. Let's go with that. And that was the little cliffhanger, the little after credits scene, I guess, of Broken Windshields. Now, in the comments for the Beast Wars Uprising, Alone Together, a lot of people were confused, thinking that this was this was part of Climax 94.17 Alpha, and it is obviously not. I don't know how they came to that conclusion, but no, it's not part of the cartoon universe. And I think you guys can see that more clearly with this podcast, because it's obviously not like what we know from Climax 94.17 Alpha. But yeah, that's the story of Broken Windshields. It begins the Grand Uprising. I think for a while I'm going to do Beast Wars Uprising stuff on the podcast. Of course, we're going to shuffle it up. I don't want to do too much in a row of 1 week. But yeah, we're going to be focusing on Beast Wars Uprising right now. And yeah, I think that wraps up this podcast. Beast Wars Uprising is actually one of my favorite continuities. But yeah, thank you guys so much for listening. Subscribe if you have not yet for more Transformers lore. Transformers lore on Monday, Transformers lore podcast on Wednesday, Primus Plays on Friday. And yeah, follow me on social media for updates, and have a good day, ladies and gentlemen.